evening, everybody, and welcome. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting, and please ask, and I'd like to bring the meeting to order and ask the roll be called, please.
Blue, Bozeman, Disharu,
Here.
Holzhauser, here, Humboldt, here, Reed,
Here.
Samwick.
Here.
Thank you. Would you, everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, Dr. Dearman will present information regarding redistricting of the middle schools.
Remember to talk into this thing so everybody hears my voice. Purpose of tonight's meeting is to go over the results of this survey that went out regarding redistricting. A couple things to go over before we get into the results. When the survey was constructed, Mrs. Bowman and I sat down and discussed how we were going to set that up. And it was done through Google. And one of the options, there was three options. One option was to have somebody, they had to sign in with a Google account. We talked about that. The whole idea was to allow everyone that wanted to participate and provide feedback. So not everyone's got a Google account, so I was afraid if we put that restriction on it, someone could say, well, I wasn't able to respond because I have a Yahoo account or I have some Hotmail account or something else. So we decided to leave that off. The other option was to have that person sign in with their email address, whatever it may be. And we've all done those surveys where you can sign in or fill out, as long as it's a proper domain name like gmail.com, you can put xyz@gmail.com and it'll go through. So if someone wanted to respond multiple times, they still could. That was an option. Or the third was just put it out as is, and it's on the integrity of the individual. If they're filling it out multiple times, they know what they're doing. They're being dishonest. So we did that. We put it out to see what would happen. And we got some calls pretty early on that, hey, did you know that people have the opportunity to fill this out more than once? So with that being said, we went ahead and changed it, which you can do live. They had to at least put an email address in so we could see if we were getting multiple emails or maybe some suspicious emails. So yes, some people did have the opportunity to fill it out more than once. We had over 1,000 responses, so I don't think it happened all that much. If it did, it was not statistically significant, but I wanted to address that before we started. Pardon me. So with that being said, results. Now we had to, I'll read all these questions to you so you know what they are. We had to cut some of them off, this one not so much, just because we start putting graphics in there with text, you're limited in space, so we wanted to keep it on one slide so it's easy to see. First one, which option sounds best to you? Option A was the Wilder weight, option B was banner, and then for some, no preference, they don't care. So these are the results, and you can see the Wilder option, 44%. I'm just reading these if you can't see it, they are rather small. And 27.2 for the banner option, and then 28.6, no preference. The next question. Now this was sent to all of the respondents, so everyone that received it, because remember, part of soliciting feedback, sometimes the best option is the one that's right in front of you that you can't see. So I made the comment last time, no one is as smart as all of us, so maybe there's something we're missing, and as a parent resident, if you can come up with a better idea or give us a suggestion, we're open to those. These are just the best options that we could come up with to attain the goal of balanced enrollments with options A and B. So this went out to everyone, and would you prefer your students currently attending DMS with Wilder weight or banner options to be allowed to grandfather in? And that means the 7th graders that are currently at DMS be allowed to continue and finish out their 8th grade year after school that they started. And as you can see, the evidence is pretty clear 704 of the 963 respondents responded yes. If you do the math, 704, 77, 93, that does add up to 963, so that one matched up well. But keep that in mind as we move forward. For this one, if you're a parent or guardian of a student, either would you choose to transport? Now this again went out to everyone, and it was split 50-50. Now the numbers don't add up here because you could have a student, or some parents could have a student that maybe was at Banner and also have a student at DMS, so they could have a yes and then a does not apply option depending on the placement of their students. So we had, I believe, 6 of those. In this one, they had a couple, they could respond twice. So it didn't necessarily make it an invalid entry for this one. But as you can see, 50-50 split when sent out to the whole group. This one kind of surprised me a little bit. Ranking questions. 1 was least likely, 5 was most likely. So what we did is we took the 4 and 5s, those were the strongest, and put those together, and then we rank ordered them. And as you can see, the top priority as identified by the respondents was equitable access. And second was least disruption to the students and their families. Third was the grandfathering option. 4th was travel time. And then last was socioeconomic balance. Trying to get cut off here. Carrie, if you scroll that so we can see it. This is kind of self-explanatory, but it's the response groups. And as you can figure, DMS had the strongest numbers because they have the most numbers. So that isn't really surprising to anyone. What I wanted to know, though, specifically of the DMS parents that responded, what were their opinions on the grandfathering and the transportation? Would you transport? This is just DMS, so this didn't go out to all of us. Well, it went out to all the respondents. We segregated the data. This is just DMS. So as you can see, would you transport with the grandfathering option? DMS parents responded yes at 23.5% and no at 29%. Thank you much. These are updated projections. The projections that were given at the last meeting were based off the most current data at the time. They did not have our current, this year's enrollments in to base those projections off. They do now. We just got these in. So these are as up to date as they can possibly be. So this is option A, so this is the Wilder option. The top one is what would they be enrollment at Dunlap Valley. So if you look at 2019 projected enrollment, 542 at Valley, and if you look at DMS, 482. Excuse me. The 2024 box is that 5-year, and that, to me, that's kind of the sweet spot. What's this going to look like in 5 years? This goes out to 10 years, but no one has a crystal ball, so who knows what's going to happen in 10 years. But 5 years is pretty logical, should be fairly stable, barring some crazy unforeseen circumstance. And again, you can see the numbers in 2020, 521 at Valley and 498 at DMS, and then 508, 525, 497, 541, 498, 530, and then 491, 526. They stay relatively balanced throughout that 5-year window. And as you look at it, it continues for the next 5 years. Again, not putting a lot of weight in that because that is rather far out in the future and strange things can happen. But in the immediate short-term future, the next 5 years, it does accomplish the goal of getting them fairly well balanced. And this is option B with Banner, with numbers as well. So in year 1, which would be next year, you're looking at 537 at Valley, 487 DMS. And you can read the numbers, but if you can't, I'll read them to you. The second year after that, 2020, year 524, 495. Third year, 528, 505. 481, 557. 460, 568. 429,588, and then the imbalance just kind of gets worse. Basically, it goes right back to where we're at now. So by year 5, according to these projections, at least by year 5, potentially maybe in 4 to 5 years, if we go with the banner option, according to these projections by this company, who we used for years, we may be looking at redistricting again, depending on which option we go with. That's the information that I have for now. Questions from the board? I've
No,
been
I
asked-
think,
Go
you know,
ahead.
I think the text today, you know, today Dunlap Middle's at capacity, and it looks like, going back to your last comment, we had some survey comments from some of the parents in the community about, you know, long-term planning, and it looks like to me, option A kind of has that kind of in there where we don't have to potentially redistrict, and it looks like B would cause us potentially in 7 or 8 years to redistrict again.
Potentially correct. I've been asked several times, recommendation. Based on the numbers, I would be remiss if I didn't say the numbers indicate clearly Wilder weight. I think the responses, we solicited input from our public, and the public input was the same, Wilder, so I think we're being respectful of their wishes. I would also suggest the grandfathering provision be allowed. I know the question that then comes up, will we provide transportation? My recommendation would be no, that we do not, for a couple of reasons. But one, we got to remember, what is the goal of doing this? To balance enrollments. If we provide transportation, what is the incentive to move? In my opinion, just mine, it's not there. I think the concession is that we are allowing the grandfathering provision to happen in the first place. So I think that's the concession, that's the give. We also need to be considerate of these gentlemen. The domino effect of this is these gentlemen are going to have to redo their master schedules to be able to accommodate their students and staffing for classes this year. If we provide transportation, that will, if it's for a year, we'll delay that, and we'll have to do it twice. We'll have to do it this year and again next year. And then we also have staffing that goes with that. We're going to have to move some teachers from DMS down to Valley to cover those new students. We may potentially have to inconvenience our staff twice if we do that. As far as the numbers, if we do not do the grandfathering transportation component, from what the respondents were and then crunching the numbers, you're looking 20 to 30 students potentially. If we do transportation, I have no idea. But basing off the responses, I can tell you it's roughly 20 to 30 students.
So Scott, are you saying in these scenarios then the 30 students on the enrollment in 2019, you take 30 away from DVMS and put it into DMS?
Correct, potentially, if they exercise the grandfather.
Right, so it would go from 510, so that even them both out, both would be at 510 then.
Yeah, 20 or 30 isn't going to make a huge difference in balancing or in staffing. I mean, you're talking.
No, I know, I just want to make sure from the numbers it's 30, so it's.
One thing I did check on in the last 2 days that honestly I didn't think about until this weekend when I was over in Germantown watching Valley play basketball was the IESA component of this. So I called IESA and talked to Steve over there. My concern was, one, the enrollments are always a year behind, so next year when they go to classify our students, Dunlap Valley and Dunlap Middle, our enrollments are going to be different no matter what we do than what they are right now, and that should be accurately reflected when they go to classify us. Example, in cross-country this year, Dunlap Valley was 2A, Dunlap Middle was 3A. Well, next year, they'll both be 2A because Dunlap Middle, losing those students, will drop them down a class. That was my first concern, get our classes correct. Second was, if we have a student that exercises the grandfathering provision and stays at Dunlap Middle because they choose to, and then they participate in extracurriculars at Dunlap Middle, are we in violation of IESA rules in allowing a student to participate that is ineligible? Because they are participating in activities in the school in which they are not districted. And the answer was no. As long as they live within the Dunlap school boundaries, which these students all would, it's the district's decision on who goes where. IESA doesn't care. So that is not a factor in this whatsoever. So if that comes up, it's not an issue. Yes, ma'am.
I know I had initially with the transportation issue, it did concern me because I know there are a lot of parents that work. And this is upsetting to middle school students. I understand that. I understand for the children, it's very difficult to have to switch schools, and nobody wants to have them do that. And initially, my thought was, perhaps if it's a hardship, we could charge for transportation. But in light of what you're saying, I have to rethink that because it leaves too many uncertainties with the numbers, like you mentioned. But I do have one question. The teachers, were they also surveyed? I noticed that it said, what is your involvement in this district? Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? So were the teachers also allowed to take the survey if they didn't have a student?
No. This was for parents and students.
Okay. One of the options said, are you a teacher? What is your part in this? And it said, are you a teacher?
Yeah, it was sent out to all of the family members, so we could have possibly had some teachers that responded, but more than likely, I have to go back and go through the data.
I'm just curious. I mean, I'm interested in their feedback as well, but I just wondered how that played into the results.
It wasn't specifically emailed out to teachers separately. There was the one message that was sent to everyone, whether or not they have a student or not. I'm not
Right,
certain.
okay, all right, thank you.
Did it go to all the schools or just the 4 listed in the response groups?
No, it was sent to all because one of the questions was, do you not have a child in any of the schools that would be affected by the redistricting? So it went out to all parents.
I do have a couple comments too. It's from Dawn because she's unable to join us tonight, but wanted to give her comments to this as well. She supports the majority of the survey participants to redistrict while awaiting DDMS, as well as the grandfathering of the students. Though, once again, and I have this concern, and I know Abby, you just talked about this too, with the transportation, like to review what the cost is. But, I'm gonna just echo what you said, the hardships on parents who would want their children to be grandfathered in as well, that don't have the ability to get their child to school and or from school because of whether it's work constraints, whatever that might be. So, I'd really like to look at that as well. I don't know, once again, I don't know what those numbers would come in at, but I don't want to say it's an unfair advantage, but those particular parents wouldn't have that option to do that.
I did solicit input from Pete at the bus bar, and he gave me his, he listed me the pros and cons of the different options. And the Wilder option for Pete was much more doable with the 2 options that were presented. Again, it's impossible to put a number on it because how many kids are going to take it. It's going to add time, and time is money. Not every bus that goes to Valley also goes to the high school and the middle school, so it would depend on where they live, what that would look like, and what time factors you're looking at if you had to add an extra run up there. He brought that forward as far as his concerns with that. The other concern that will come from this, if we provide transportation, is the other side of it, which I've already heard, is my kid's already on the bus long enough, now you're going to add extra stops, now my kid's got to be on there even longer. So there's that side of it as well, which the board should consider as well.
And administratively speaking, from a principal standpoint, when you add 3 or 4 more buses to the morning, I mean, that is also kind of a concern and safety issues, yeah.
I just got stopped on the way in here by a parent talking about their congestion at DMS in the mornings and how it's a problem. Safety concern. So it's legit.
But once again, I think we need to look into that as well because, they didn't ask to move, we are moving them.
So I guess I'm just going to speak up because I've been through this twice. We moved from Ridgeview to Welder White, from VMS to DMS. We have the same questions that we time and they're addressed this time. The balance in number is important. And offers equality and extracurricular activities, which is really probably very important for those kids who are moving to get involved, and those kids at DMS will now have more of an opportunity perhaps because it is smaller in number. We had that issue for quite some time between those two schools in sports and cutting or whatnot. And so I can say there might be a little apprehension, and there was many years ago. We had parents come forward, but I think in the end, and I can't speak for Cheryl, so our sons are the same age, and it was, for us, it was seamless. Now, I don't know what Jason did, but Zach did a nice job welcoming the kids in. They had T-shirts, there was a dance, and they invited DVMS, and you get to know more people, and by the time you get to high school, you know a lot of the students, and it's not so overwhelming once you get to high school, because the high school can be quite intimidating when you get there and you don't know anybody. But my kids adjusted and they did fine, and sure, some kids might be apprehensive, but in the end it worked for us.
I will echo those sentiments by Mrs. Reed. If you don't know my story, I started in July, and I have a 7th grader at Jason's building and a 9th grader here at the high school. So I uprooted kids in terms of my point where I live in the district, which is understandable. But I uprooted 2 kids, started one at 7th grade Valley, new town, new school, new community, and didn't know a soul walking in the school. And same thing with my son. He's a freshman, which freshman year is tough anyway because you're a freshman. Plus he didn't know anyone. And both had to transition well. My daughter, probably more so than my son, she's very outgoing, but both are doing well, both socially and academically. So I agree.
And well, the other thing I have to add too is the quality of instruction and the teachers at both schools, because you're in a school, right? And you really love some of those teachers because they've really, helped your kids along the way. But you will find in whatever school you're going to, and I can speak for that because I've been at both of them, that you will find those same quality instructors at the other school for both social emotional support and educationally.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you.
Scott.
Before you move to the next action item, Crystal, her last day was a week ago Tuesday, and we have the lady that's on there, Cheryl.
Yep.
She is an experienced keeper with the Kiva School District. She went here for 2 weeks notice.
Okay.
Still quit last week, we need her in here.
Okay.
So that's why I put it on tonight, but not
Oh.
so we can give her a role.
I understood.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Good move.
Okay, we will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no one, that will conclude the public.
Oh, we got one.
Oh, you want to come up here, and if you could sign in, please? And I need to read something, so, okay. Before addressing the board, I would like to remind you of our process. For Board Policy 2230, we ask that when addressing the board, please identify yourself and be brief. Comment shall be limited to 5 minutes. The speaker is asked to please conduct oneself with respect and civility toward others. Individuals less than 18 years of age are permitted to address the board if accompanied by his or her parent or guardian. The board typically does not engage in two-way conversations during the public portion of the meeting. Any follow-up response will be addressed by the administration at a later date. To be respectful of others and to protect confidentiality, complaints against individual students, staff members, or board members, either named or unnamed, shall not be orally presented to the Board of Education. Such complaint should be put in writing, signed by the person or persons making the charges, and delivered to the Board of Education secretary. So at this time, if you could go ahead and state your name, you can begin.
Hi, my name is Jen Doctor. I have a 6th grader at DMS. I know you guys can't answer the question, but the whole grandfathering, is it just to include 7th graders, current 7th graders there, or is it the intent to also include 6th graders being allowed to stay at their current middle school?
Can we?
You can.
7th grade.
Just 7th grade?
you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board? Okay, this concludes the public participation portion of the meeting, and we'll now move on to the action items. Could I please have a motion to approve the Human Resources consent agenda?
I move to approve the Human Resources consent agenda for 2018-19 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Beth Reese, seconded by Teresa Holzhauser. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Reed.
Aye.
Holzhauser.
Aye.
Disharum.
Aye.
Humboldt.
Aye.
Samon.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved by Abby Humble, seconded by Beth Reed. Is there any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.